Hello, I'm Ryan McEachern, and welcome to The Dig. Today we are going to explore the impact of the pandemic from a manufacturing perspective. We will also look at the market in general and take a deeper dive on battery electric vehicles. To help us dig into these topics, we are joined by Stuart Lister of MacLean Engineering, another valued member of MSTA Canada, and a company that are pioneers in the battery electric space. Hi, Stuart. Good to see you again, and welcome to The Dig.
Thank you, Ryan. Good to be here. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So tell us a little bit about how MacLean has managed through the beginning months here of this pandemic.
Yeah, well, like everybody else across the country and around the world, we had to do a rapid adjustment in March. Our manufacturing isn't production line. It's kind of unit of one, custom manufacturing. So we have the benefit of having the ability to create space on the line. But for sure, we had to, and in fact, when the province first announced the state of emergency back in March, we took 2 weeks of a full shutdown to organize ourselves for a manufacturing environment where you needed to have 2 meters and you needed to put a whole list of things in place to make sure that everyone was safe. And so that was time well spent. And we're back. The plant is as full as it can be, but it's not the same as it was, and it could be like this for a long time, where we've had to not only put enhanced cleaning, but just the spacing on the floor, and the availability of our workforce to be able to return to work. So there's a whole host of issues that I'm sure all the companies in the mining sector, even though we're service, these materials are needed, you still, even though it's not a full shutdown, you're not coming back to the same, the pre-pandemic reality. So right. I think everyone has been, our kudos go out to, in our case, to our, we have an environment, health and safety team and the plant managers that really, like you hear a lot about pivoting, and they did basically in that 2-week period, put in a whole range of measures to make sure that our workforce is safe and that we can continue doing what we do, which is, manufacturing vehicles. But there's no doubt that that's not the same as it was. But right. we're getting through it, and just it's like everybody, it takes a lot of planning and a lot of additional work to make sure that you can continue doing what you do in the COVID reality.
Right. So we heard from a lot of companies also similar to your situation, where because of social distancing on the manufacturing floor, they, as opposed to struggled to find people work in a slowing down of activity, they actually struggled to fill the shifts. Was that something similar to you?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, when after our 2 weeks shutdown, our return to work was getting back to 75% workforce availability, and needing to combine that with the distancing. And so it's a constant managing of that, both the need to provide the distancing on the floor, and then these availability, people who can screen back in.
Right. So, and how about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but that's just something that it took, although a lot of the changes happened almost overnight, there's other aspects to the post, that we're still in the pandemic, but there's other aspects that need to be managed for a long time to come.
Right.
Yeah, so that's it. You're not only do you need to provide that distancing and change the way certain parts of the workflow, but there are a significant number of people that can't screen back in, and so that's it's like I said, we're lucky in the sense that we don't do production line manufacturing, but no doubt there's been a lot of adjustments required, and there will continue to be required.
Right. What were your challenge, or did you have any challenges with regards to PPE? I know it was a bit of a struggle for a lot of people. How did you manage through that?
Yeah, it was at the beginning when no one knew exactly what you needed. Again, there was so much information flowing back. This is going back to what seems like a lifetime ago, let's say in March.
Yeah.
Sure, what, you know, and the availability of the non-surgical masks, and then the directive that it, you know, the suggestion more to a recommendation. So I think for the gloves and for the mask, we actually, because the hospitals, again, at that front end, were making a call for PPE, and we actually donated PPE in the early days in our Southern Ontario region. The hospitals were not overrun in that initial phase. So and then it was when the directive came, or the recommendation, that masks were a good idea. That then we were able to source them. And again, we're not sourcing the medical, the N95s, so it's a different option for us. But yeah, there's, again, on the procurement side, there was many all the details that need to be worked out for the kind of infrastructure you need to protect your people. So
right, and with what you are doing in your business, like you said, it's custom work, but like a lot of manufacturing and mining, there's a lag to order to delivery. So you're actually kind of just working through a backlog right now? Is that kind of what's kept the activity going?
Yeah, we're always in a 4 to 6 month kind of backlog of work. So yeah, the sales cycle can be 1 to 2 years, and then you get the purchase orders in, and so you roll through the factory that way. So there is a bit of a lag, and it's you know, given the overall, no one knows how deep and how extended the contraction will be. So it's of course it's different for every sector. For mining, it'll look different than the restaurant industry, and et cetera. So I think we're always looking at it in terms of feeling very fortunate that we're in the right industry at the right time, given that other sectors just hit a wall, and now we're slowly, in Ontario, we're getting into that reintroduction, and people figuring out what, maybe the summer, and more so what the fall is going to look like. And
yeah, exactly. And the government did quite a bit of work. They were pretty fast to react to the needs of what was happening. With all the programming that they provided, were you able to take advantage of or utilize some of the assistance they provided?
Yeah, for sure, all of the above. I think, like a lot of companies, it was the payroll supports, the work share, and the extension of the payroll support. So yeah, no, it's all, I think every tool that's available to companies. But we're not an SME anymore. We're at that 1,000 employees, give or take. So I think it's yes, and it's going to be a mix of tools as we go forward, depending on how long the contraction goes, and needing to avail yourself of things like work share for an extended period of time, temporary layoffs, of course, part of the mix, and then the payroll supports, which are very, very helpful. So kudos to the federal government for rolling that out extremely fast. And and then that'll be again, with all the unknowns, I think that's part of the dance that companies are doing now, is figuring out how it's what you'll need at what point in time. And again, with there's many unknowns, and at the best of times, a manufacturing company in the mining sector looks forward, let's say, 6 months in terms of knowing what their plant is going to look like. At least like us, that one of our value propositions is that we can respond fast, and given the manufacturing, the type of level of effort for each mining vehicle that we crank out, give or take 2,000 person hours. So we can be pretty responsive in terms of delivery times. And then as the mining sector goes through a slowdown, that you can get even better with those delivery times. Now you've got to balance that off the labor availability. So that's what we'll see in terms of going forward as the reopening, the phases of reopening go through, at least in Ontario, where with the base of our manufacturing.
Right. Yeah. And a little bit about with your products, you get them off the line. Have you had to ship product during this time, and how are the logistics of that been working out?
Yeah, the logistics are more challenging for sure. It's the people logistics. It's what we typically do is obviously when a rig gets commissioned, that's a front end. When it gets introduced underground, is a point in time where the McLean technician or product support specialist is really critical. So when that's happening in places like Chile or South Africa, that our people obviously can't get on a plane and get to,
right.
Much less Northern Ontario, it introduces a whole other layer of complexity to it. So that's been another area. So the manufacturing floor changes, which have to come in overnight, but also the way that we provide, commissioning support, but training basically. It's okay. Well, now we need to do things like provide really good quality instructional videos. And we purchased a test mine in Sudbury in 2018. And again, we had just been kind of bringing it up to doing work on it. And then luckily now we have a place where we can do these training video shoots.
Right.
Never had thought that we needed it for a business context where your people couldn't fly around the world, which we know in mining is what happens, because mining doesn't happen in places like Toronto and New York City. So
you've really, this is kind of a good example of having to innovate because of the pandemic.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And again, it's happened fast. And again, we all have these tools, at least just with basic video, much less the enhanced technologies like VR and AR that we're also, we have a VR training tool looking at AR. So we're looking at all of the above again, and in that expectation that our ability to send people on a moment's notice to the mining camps around the world is going to be really restricted for a good amount of time. We don't know how much, but so in the meantime, we can still export the knowledge using these tools, and like we're doing now. It's okay. It'd be better if we were in the same room together, but you can still make it work. So that's it's in the same boat. So I think you deal with it and
yeah. So how are the employees? How are they reacting to kind of being in front of a camera? It's not a natural environment to be in. So how are they feeling about it?
They're doing great. I mean, there's that initial discomfort about being a movie star, but over it fast, and our people are learning about how to do basic video, and we bring in really talented videographers to help us and to make the magic. So I think it's a combination of the metal and the machines, right? You need to have both, and these videos, these instructional videos, anyways, they highlight both, and then it's always a thrill to see our people step into the same role they've always done, which is explain how the machines work safely, and but to do it in front of a camera, which is a little bit there's an initial awkwardness, but it goes away pretty quick. So
right. Excellent. If I can maybe just move to another topic, it's just more about the market in general. Is how are you seeing the mining companies react to this? We know that some have had to do a temporary shutdown and stuff, but how are you seeing the mining companies reacting?
Well, yeah, I think like us, it's just this overall pause to figure out what's going on and how long it's going to go on for, and just doing those really the priority is making sure your people are safe. And some mines, shut down when care and maintenance, some didn't, and that depending on the part of the world they're in. So I think now that is working itself out, and like us, the first thing is take care of your people, get the basic systems and processes in place. And it's just an overall pause, and yet the underlying need is still there. And it's just a question of, we understand just the mining, the operators are the same, or the mining companies are the same positions as we were and still are, is having to manage that new reality in the day. but the underlying business need is still there. So that's kind of where we're at, and looking at it now with at least in Canada or Ontario, the full reopening, at least phase 2 of it, and looking, what it means this summer, and it's still expecting travel restrictions and the support, the need for it to be offered remotely. But hopefully sooner than later that we'll be able to. I mean, there will need to be people going to mines, of course. That is still happening, and that we kind of bridge the two phases with these, like we said, these training tools. Use it as much as we can, and to bridge to the back to at least not maybe exactly how it was pre-pandemic, but pretty close. And having learned, taking the best of what we can from the technologies that we have, and to highlight our people's strength. Really, that's what it is.
Right. Are you seeing from the company perspective? Are you seeing any commodity that's faring well better than the others, or the mining companies as a whole just being
the gold miners are, because it's the counter-cyclical, and we the gold mining companies were a big part of our customer base before the pandemic, and that's even more so now. So I think that we benefit from those long-standing relationships with some of these major gold miners, and then doubling down on technology, our R&D. I think there's an overall pause, but companies now looking at getting back into planning for things like electrification and automation and digitalization. All those the three big pillars, they don't disappear because you're going through a pandemic. Arguably, they're important now.
And that's kind of a good segue, Stuart. I was, I mentioned in our introduction to today that your company effectively was a pioneer in the battery electric vehicle space for mining. When did you guys get started? If we can talk a little more about the battery electric part of your product line, when did you guys get started?
Yeah, it goes back now almost 5 years, 2015, in the lead up to the last Mine Expo in 2016. So we officially launched. We brought one of our first battery electric rock bolters to Las Vegas at the 2016 Mine Expo. And now we're up to 30 plus battery electric vehicles working in Canada. We've got a battery boom truck being trialed in British Columbia now. It's and obviously we're doing trials at our own test mine, and so we're kind of hit that tipping point in Canada, we feel, with our battery electric line. We're continuing to expand our full fleet electrification across our whole product line, and taking this time to redouble efforts to look to the next generation of McLean EV series, and our ability. We spent a lot of time going around the world, literally in person, myself and my colleagues, explaining to the mining industry what was available to them as a diesel-free option. The typical things, conferences, and so that obviously has been curtailed. Now that Mine Expo gets rescheduled to, sliding back a year, everyone takes a breath, and we re-ramp up to that. For us, will be the unveiling of our next generation McLean EV. So the timing is now that they've settled, which is good. We can plan around that, and with travel hopefully being less limited than it is now, and so I think that's where all the drivers for electrification and automation that were there before the pandemic are still there. So yes, there's been a pause, but it hasn't been a pause specific to BEVs. It's just been a general pause.
And that's kind of it's an it's an interesting comment, because it kind of answers the question to me about, did the pandemic, was a catalyst to have companies innovate or start looking at innovation a little closer. But it seems to be they, to your point, they paused a bit. So it's not that it was a catalyst or anything. We've got a pause button, but there's all this momentum that was happening prior, and now it's just okay. Now it's about press the play button, if you will, on that. What have been, so just kind of talk about that aspect about the, you sound like you had to educate them on what their options were to let them know what you could offer. What have been some of the hurdles that you're running into with the companies to adopt your technology?
Yeah, I think the initial driver was always that it will allow them to reduce the amount of ventilation they need, so their energy use, which is that electricity bill is one of the biggest operating, one of the big buckets. But increasingly over the years, and I said, going out of since 2015, now it is removing the diesel particulate from this work environment. So, and again, you work through all the questions about that upfront capital cost versus the whole life cycle cost, all the other benefits you're getting from going to this battery electric propulsion as opposed to diesel engine. And the difference now is that more and more companies are doing their planning, so the early stage planning, and saying, okay, well, let's do the diesel versus EV base case. And these projects take years to go from an idea to producing, right? So all different phases of study. So I think that is a big one. It's a big shift that maybe isn't noticeable because the number of BEVs out there in the field are still a fraction of the diesel ones, but all the work is setting up this ramp up of adoption, and like I said, the need for it hasn't shifted or been eroded by a pandemic. If anything, it's augmented it. But again, I think we're just in this overall industry pause and people figuring out where things are at in terms of the duration of it.
Right.
Every day brings new clarity, new information. It's a confusing, sometimes mess of data coming in. And so like everybody, we're trying to figure it out and doing what we have to do to position the company for that long-term sustainability or resiliency. Also saying, okay, well, it doesn't change the storyline here.
Right.
This is where the mining sector is going in terms of electrification.
Right.
And we still need to go out there and share that story with mining companies around the world. So that hasn't changed at all. Right.
And the business case seems to be there for definitely for the new build. You're one of the pieces of equipment that was chosen by Newmont now of Borden Lake, an all-electric underground mine, which was, through that vision allows you to display and demonstrate the product. How is it from a retrofit perspective? Have you engineered it to do that, and how are companies looking at it that way?
Yeah, it's you can engineer it. It ends up being typically what it'll be is the benefits really can be done on a unit by unit, but really it's on a fleet basis. And when you're starting from the greenfield, like the Borden project, right? So retrofit can be done, but the real opportunity is getting multiple units at a site, of course, and not that the one-offs don't happen. And a big part of it is also on the workforce side and the training and the adoption by the operators. And so you're introducing a new technology that is replacing diesel operation, but for something like, let's say, take a boom truck. So not the production support side of the vehicle fleet that, in the diesel context, you could fill up the tank and not think about it for 2 days,
Yeah.
and now, yeah, you're tank is battery electricity, and you need to think about it in terms of how to charge it. So some of the mindset change, and so you need to work with the operators, and once the mindset change happens, when accompanying the technological change, well, then you have a perfect combination.
Right.
So yeah, there's some work that has to be done at the front end. But yeah, the benefits are so tangible, especially in terms of the work environment. So obviously there's no diesel, zero emissions, so no diesel fumes at the end of, you don't come home after the end of a shift. The noise, it's really,
it's just a better work environment, right?
It's a better
I've
work
heard
environment.
That. Yeah.
So the operators really appreciate it on day one, and then as you ramp up the number of battery electric units that you have, and you get those ventilation reduction benefits. So it's one of those things that has that perfect combination of environmental and economic benefits.
Right. All right. And, I'll just kind of ask the question here. It's, at the cusp of the pandemic, we were all at the PDAC convention. Most of us were, 23,000. And the Prime Minister Trudeau took the opportunity to announce, companies could do a full tax write-off on off-road vehicles, which included electric mining vehicles. So have you heard? I know he made the announcement. We went into the pandemic. I guess the question to you is: are you hearing companies think about that at least in Canada? About have they forgotten about it, or is it something that people are talking about when they get back up to speed?
Well, I think it's a really good point, because it was such a big splash at PDAC, and we were all there. And then we so suddenly hit the pandemic reality that I feel it's one that we have to go back. MacLean and in general has to go back and promote that even more, because it's another, like we say, with the workforce, or the payroll supports, or the work share. There's all these tools that are there for these Canadian companies, and I think it's another avenue they can follow to get where they want to go, which is electrification. So I think that it got announced, and it was on that day a big splash, and we've yet to see really see it take root. But I would expect, as everyone's getting back, and the mine sites are back to full production almost, that you'll start to see, especially during these planning phases, of companies really looking at it and say, okay, well this tips the scale, hopefully, in terms of them making that EV switch, which we know is the momentum's building. So I think it's one of those ones we'll have to see in the months to come. But
exactly. And with all the uncertainty, we just kind of have to look at that lens in different time frames. And I won't put you on the spot to try and figure out what the next generation will look like and what all that is. I guess we're just going to have to wait for the big reveal. And until then, Stuart, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, Ryan. Thank you for all your support with the organization. It's a big help to us, and always a pleasure to support you, and hopefully see you soon in person very, very soon.
Exactly. Take care and stay safe.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. You too. Take care.
And thank you for joining us on The Dig. If you have a story you wish to share, contact us at The Dig at mstacanada.ca. Also, we're looking for new members. If your company sells a product or service to the mining industry and you're looking for ways to grow your business, join MSTA Canada. I'm Ryan McEachern. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, stay safe.